Today's video lesson is using semantic and text structure after reading to help us figure out what we're reading. The skill is going to be using this semantic and text structure to figure out how things are working, or how well we can understand things. The objective is that students will be able to complete the semantic chart and compare and contrast birds and bats after they read the story or the article Birds and Bats. The materials needed are this chart right here, this semantic chart, as well as a reading. The intensification that's going to be added is more systematic instruction. So instead of just reading it and filling it out, we're going to read it. I'm going to show the students how to highlight first about birds and then about bats, and then we're going to fill out the chart one by one. This breaks it up into pieces so students can more readily accessible understand what they're reading. All right, here we go. Remember how we read about birds and bats yesterday? Well, today we're going to use that same article and we're going to fill out our semantic chart. Our semantic chart helps us to figure out the difference and the similarities between birds and bats. This is called comparing and contrasting. Can anyone say that with me? Comparing and contrasting? Comparing and contrasting. Very good. There's a couple different ways we can do this. I'm going to teach you guys a trick that will make this easier so that we don't have to spend so much time on this. Here's what we're going to do. We've already read this article once. Now we're going to go through it and we're going to highlight everything that talks about birds, okay? If something talks about birds, we are going to highlight it in a color. What color do you guys think we should use today? You want to use yellow? All right, we'll use yellow for birds. Here we go. I'm going to highlight birds right here so I know that I'm looking for all the stuff that has birds. As I read, I want you to raise your hand when you hear me read a sentence about birds. Have you ever noticed about how at night things are flying in the air? You've probably wondered if the birds are still awake. Ooh, talking about birds, I'll highlight that word. But they were not birds, but bats. Bats obviously fly through the air, but does that make them birds? I heard birds again. Even though they fly through the air, bats are not birds. People used to think of bats as birds without feathers. According to scientific principles of classification, though, we now know there's no such thing as a bird without feathers. Instead, bats are mammals. Ooh, let's highlight this. So we're going to go, there's no such thing as a bird without feathers. Okay? All right. Next section. Remember, we're still looking for birds. In fact, bats are the only mammal that can truly fly. A few other mammals, such as the flying squirrel, appear to fly, but they actually glide through the air instead. What makes a bat a mammal? For starters, it has fur instead of feathers. Bats also give birth to live young and produce milk for their babies. Birds, on the other hand, lay eggs and give food by foraging. Ooh, this is all about birds. Let's highlight this. Birds have beaks and no teeth. Ooh, that's important. Whereas bats have jawbones and sharp teeth. All right. Next, I want you to read with your partner the next section, and I want you to highlight all the things about birds in yellow. Go ahead. So as students are reading, these are the things they should have highlighted. That birds have rigid feather wings that flap completely in order. Birds have wings that move only in a couple directions. Bats is different, types of bone, blah, blah, blah. And then the other thing that they should have highlighted, that should have been it for birds. Yes. All right. Nice job, guys. So now we read about birds and we highlighted all the things in yellow that happen with birds. Let's do the same thing with bats. I'm going to choose a different color. I'm going to choose purple because it's easier to differentiate. And I'm going to highlight bats in purple. So now I know that I'm going to have two different colors, so it makes it easy for me to see the difference. Let's see here. I'm going to write things about bats. Bats fly through the air. Even though they fly through the air, bats are not birds. I'm going to highlight that bats are not birds. I'm going to highlight that bats are mammals. Bats are the only mammals that can truly fly. Let's see here. Ooh, bats have fur instead of feathers. Bats also give birth to live young and, it didn't work. There we go. All right. So I did the first section for you guys, right? We did this together. So your paper should look like mine, right? Great. Now I want you to do this with your partner, and I want you to read the rest of the article. Remember, highlight just the stuff about bats. If you've come to a section that already has stuff about birds, you can skip it because we've already highlighted it. All right. This is where the students should have highlighted about bats. Bats, see here, the bones resemble people. Bats fly more efficiently than birds. Bats use less energy than birds. All right. All right, students, very good. Now, we're going to take this information we know, and we're going to go to our semantic chart over here. Can everyone take out their piece of paper that has a semantic chart on it? Very good. When I mark something on mine, you guys are going to mark it as yours. If we get to a category and our bird has it, we're going to put a plus. So we're going to do all of our birds first. We're going to go right in this order. Okay? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to change my pen on this side. See, we used yellow for birds, so I'm going to keep us going with our yellow theme here. All right. So the first thing I'm going to look at is the flight. How do birds move? Do birds flap their wings or do birds glide? Let's look back in our text. Here it says, let's see here, birds have rigid feathered wings that flap in order to fly. Ooh, so I'm going to put a plus. Oops. Oh, we can't see that. I'm going to change this up just a second here. We're going to make this a little thicker. Here we go. Plus for flapping wings and a minus for gliding. Okay? Now, what about eating? Do birds have beaks and no teeth, or do birds have jaws and sharp teeth? Let's see here. You're right, birds have beaks and no teeth. So let's mark that over here. So I'm going to put a plus on beaks. Oops. I'm going to put a minus on jaws. All right. What about reproduction? Do birds lay eggs or do they have live births? Yes, right over here it says birds, on the other hand, lay eggs. Perfect. So I'm going to put a plus on the eggs category and a minus for live birth. I want you guys to work with your partner, and I want you to fill out the outer covering. Do birds have feathers or do they have fur? Talk with your neighbor. See what you guys can come up with. All right, bring it back. Which one do birds have? Do birds have feathers or fur? Yes, you guys are right. Birds have feathers, not fur. All right, so we did the section for birds. We know that birds flap their wings. They have beaks and not teeth. They have eggs, they lay eggs, and they have feathers. Let's do the same for bats. I'm going to switch my color to purple so I can tell the difference between our two markings. All right. How about bats? Do bats flap their wings or do they glide? Yes, bats also have wings that they flap. So we're going to put a plus in our flap and a minus in glide. I want you to fill out the rest of this chart with your partner. Let's see if bats have beaks and no teeth, jaws and sharp teeth, if bats lay eggs or if they give live birth, and if bats have feathers or do bats have fur. Remember, look back at your text and find all the things with purple. That way we don't have to reread the whole article. We can just find the highlights. All right, let's bring it back. Someone share with me, what did you guys put for the eating section? Yes, bats have jaws and sharp teeth. They do not have beaks. All right, how about reproduction? Who's got that answer? Yes, bats have live birth. They do not lay eggs. Our last one, somebody new? Awesome. Bats have fur, but they do not have feathers. Now I can look at this chart and I can fully understand the differences and similarities between bats and birds. Both the bat and the bird flap their wings to fly, so I know that bat and birds fly in the same way. However, for the rest of my chart, they have opposite things. Birds have beaks, bats have teeth, have jaws. They are not the same in this way. When they reproduce, birds lay eggs and bats have live births. They are not the same, they are different. And for the outer coverings, birds have feathers and bats have fur. They are not the same with their outer coverings. That is how we can use this chart to quickly read an article, fill it out, and see what we know. We can compare and contrast them. Next, we're going to do another article. This time, we're going to read about different kinds of snakes. As we read about the different kinds of snakes, you guys will take out your chart. There's another chart for you to have, and you guys will work with a partner on this one. Remember, the first step is to read the article. Then we're going to read it again and highlight looking for one kind of snake, and we're going to read it a third time and highlight looking for the second kind of snake. If you have questions, you can raise your hand, but right now I want you guys to get started with your partner, flip to the next page, our article on snakes, and take out the snake chart. That was a video lesson on comprehension. It is important to note that with systematic instruction, you break it down for students. Having them highlight and going section by section when they fill out the chart helps them really focus on one thing at a time. Usually when students are asked to compare and contrast, they get overwhelmed and they look at it going, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. This is a really quick and easy way for them to be able to, while they're filling out their chart, look for the different highlights, just look at those words and not have to read the entire thing over again.